Chapter 1050, Good at Using Hypnosis. As the ancient Hermes' words resounded, the areas where Audrey and H. Finn Rambus stood dimmed. It was as if someone had passed by, blocking the window that was closest to them, then quickly left. By the time the light returned, the island filled with a terrifying mind storm in the illusory world had transformed from Audrey's to H. Finn Rambus' S. The person that had intruded on the other party's body of heart and mind went from H. Finn Rambus to Audrey. Fate Siphon Charm. This was made using a worm of time as the material. Using the Fool's powers, this charm was created. It could siphon off a corresponding target's subsequent fate for a short period of time, exchanging the corresponding fate with the user. It was the consultation fee Audrey had received from J.M. and Sparrow after she treated Hazel's mental breakdown. With the corresponding charm, she could divert her future of having her consciousness defenses broken and losing control over her thoughts to H. Finn Rambus. She then siphoned off the mind storm from him and opened her target's door to the body of heart and mind. She then directly altered and planted the corresponding consciousness's fate. In an instant, the situation reversed. Audrey went from the edge of collapse to gaining the absolute advantage. Of course, this advantage could only last for a short period of time. Frankly speaking, if it weren't for her imagining how she could save herself in a desperate situation, Audrey definitely wouldn't have thought of using the Fate Siphon charm. Or it could be said that, by the time she thought of it, it would be too late. At this moment, just like how she had practiced it countless times in her mind, she suppressed her surprised emotions from the effects of the Fate Siphon charm and quickly confirmed her condition. With her current advantage, she made the hypnosis and mind storm swirl together, instantly opening H. Finn Rambus's door to his body of heart and mind. H. Finn Rambus was instantly dumbfounded, as if he was an ordinary person whose attention had been diverted to Audrey's golden eyes and thus fall under her hypnosis. Yes, at this moment, as a demigod of the spectator pathway, he had been controlled by Audrey, who was only a sequence 6. This way, even if the effects of the Fate Siphon charm came to an end, it wouldn't change the development in the real world. However, Audrey knew that, with the help of the magical charm, she was using H. Finn Rambus's powers to open the door to his body of heart and mind and achieve initial control. Whatever she wanted to do later would definitely be rejected by him, and with her sequence level, she had no means to resist or control such intense power. Furthermore, she could clearly sense that H. Finn Rambus was subconsciously resisting his current state. In the real world, a small amount of gray scales began to appear on his face. In no time, he would be able to forcefully extricate himself from the state of my initial control over his mind. A realization flashed across Audrey's mind. She then cast her gaze towards H. Finn Rambus's head, feeling a little regretful that she didn't carry a powerful revolver with her. Otherwise, she could take this opportunity to shoot at him several times in a row in an attempt to kill him. Soon, she recalled that she had dragon scales. She believed that H. Finn Rambus definitely had it, and that it was even stronger. It wasn't something an ordinary attack could tear through. Even most mystical items that were at the mid or low sequences couldn't do so. And if she couldn't kill him in one shot, H. Finn Rambus would definitely be able to use this opportunity to regain consciousness and escape her control. Without any hesitation, Audrey, who lacked the appropriate offensive abilities, quickly came to a decision. Hypnotize him. He's best at hypnotizing and is very resistant against this, so he wouldn't prepare any additional items that can affect his defense. I can't let him do things that will be against his will. With our difference in levels, I definitely can't resist the corresponding subconscious resistance he puts up. Thoughts ran through Audrey's mind as she spread her slightly parched lips. She tried hard not to show any signs of abnormality as she looked into H. Finn Rambus's eyes and said in a gentle voice, "Find a spot inside Glaint's mansion and wait. Find me in the garden 15 minutes later." Such a subconscious thought didn't stir any obvious signs of being rejected. Therefore, Audrey was able to complete her control rather smoothly. To H. Finn Rambus, he was indeed looking for Audrey today, and the venue for the meeting was also Viscount Glaint's mansion. Audrey's hypnosis was simply changing the corresponding time and place, and the discrepancies were just in a very small aspect. It matched H. Vin Rambus's thoughts and didn't waste too much of his effort. Therefore, she didn't encounter any intense resistance. "All right," H. Vin Rambus responded to Audrey's words. Audrey didn't care to let out a sigh of relief. She focused and continued looking into the other party's eyes. She gently said, "You will only come looking for me in 15 minutes, so you haven't seen me today. Since you haven't seen me, everything that happened just now definitely didn't happen. They will be forgot." As H. Vin Rambus had accepted the hypnosis, he followed the logical train of thought. Although there was resistance, it wasn't anything intense. Soon, the golden light disappeared from those alluring eyes. "Yes, I haven't seen you before. Nothing happened just now," H. Vin Rambus repeated with a blank expression. The grayish-white scales on the surface of his skin had increased significantly again. After completing this crucial step, Audrey resisted the urge to pat her chest and thought for a second. "When you hear my singing, it will become quiet." She wanted to hypnotize him with her charm, but she realized that she wasn't able to take on a seductive pose, and she couldn't make the corresponding expressions. She could only lift her hand to comb her blonde hair and tilt her head. The ripples in her eyes swirled as her smile beamed. Following that, she hummed a melody, "Manor Under the Moon" in a nasal voice. H. Vin Rambus looked at the girl in front of him, who looked as beautiful as sunlight, flowers, and gems. Listening to the ethereal voice, his mind gradually turned silent, as he no longer had any resistance. Seeing that her initial control was about to be released, Audrey didn't hesitate and pointed to the other side of the corridor. "Go over there, and you will regain consciousness and dispel dragon scales when you see the stained glass." She knew very well that on the other side of the corridor, there were exquisite white stained glass. This order didn't pose any danger, nor did it violate H. Vin Rambus's will. He immediately took a step forward, walked down the corridor, and turned right. Only when his back disappeared from her sights did Audrey slowly exhale, allowing the fear, alarm, and anxiety to surge into her heart. Her body trembled slightly as she opened her mouth slightly. She couldn't help but gasp and exhale. 10 seconds later, Audrey used placate on herself and calmed herself down. Then she glanced at the wall clock and stood there, raising her hands and placing them in front of her mouth and nose, reciting Mr. Fool's honorific name in a low voice. She prayed for an angelic blessing again and requested this great existence to tell the world Jayaman Sparrow that she had confirmed when H. Vin Rambus would arrive and would summon him 2 minutes ahead of time, allowing him to arrive at the appropriate moment. There was no need to be in a rush or to be too close to prevent H. Vin Rambus from being aware of an ambush. During this process, Audrey only briefly mentioned what had happened. She didn't elaborate on it to prevent wasting any time. Following that, she raised her hands and pressed her cheeks, completely restoring her expression to normal. She began hypnotizing herself, allowing herself to sing the melody the moment she saw H. Vin Rambus. After doing all of this, Audrey went to the main hall and first found the golden retriever, Susie. She then retrieved the lie necklace and the alcohol nemesis diamond brooch. The latter, which could resist any mental influence, could only be worn for half an hour. Otherwise, the damage one's liver and brains suffered would be irreversible. Therefore, Audrey prepared to wear them again after she left Glaint's residence to prevent H. Vin Rambus from finding her midway. Susie didn't notice anything amiss with Audrey as she watched her wear the brooch and necklace. After a few minutes, Audrey folded a black fishnet glove into her equestrian pocket and used the excuse of going to the washroom, making a detour to Viscount Glaint's garden. Then she looked at the large clock hung up on the attached tower, her mind tensing up as she memorized the time. To her, she was afraid that H. Vin Rambus wouldn't come, but she was also worried that he might come early or be late. Time passed by slowly and Audrey used placate twice to calm herself down. When there was still 2 minutes and 15 seconds left, she took off the feather accessory on her hat and flicked her wrist. The scarlet flames soared, igniting the white feather. This was Lie's flame-controlling ability. As the flames burned, they turned pale. In just 2 or 3 seconds, the feather, which was a product of artificial death, was reduced to ashes. Nothing happened around her. Looking at the clock, Audrey took out a charm made of tin and recited a word in ancient Hermes. Lightning. The charm lit up as though many tiny electric snakes were entangling with it. It was a charm that summoned Jayam Sparrow. When the lightning dissipated, the charm completely disintegrated and melted into the void. However, there was still silence without so much as a sound. Zio and Fours should have found a church of Evernight Cathedral and begun praying. Audrey calmed down and pretended to enjoy the flowers of the remaining autumn days. She didn't lift her head to look at the large clock, counting the time in her heart. 3, 2, 1. She slowly raised her head and looked around, but she didn't see H. Rambus. He discovered something strange and distanced himself from this place. Audrey's heart tightened as she couldn't help but think back to what she had missed. At that moment, she heard a gentle voice. "What are you looking for?" Audrey's pupils dilated. From the corner of her eye, she realized that the silver-haired, blue-eyed H. Rambus had appeared beside her at some point in time, a hint of suspicion hidden in his voice. Having already hypnotized herself, she didn't hesitate at all. She followed her subconscious and started humming the melodic Manor Under the Moon. Amidst the ethereal voice, H. Rambus calmed down and listened attentively. Suddenly, he realized that the distance between him and Audrey had become very far despite them remaining in their respective spots. The dark night enveloped the garden despite it being late in the afternoon. A huge crimson moon rose over the top of the building as a figure stood there, wearing a black trench coat and a half-top hat. His face looked hazy due to the backlighting.